weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back to Mash the Gas podcast. We're here to talk everything Throwback Weekend in Darlington that just happened and everything that's with Bristol coming up. We had a really good race. It was very interesting last part of the race. But before we get into all that, I got to ask Kevin, who mashed the gas the hardest?
Well, 11 against the world was a big statement. These guys, that pit crew, that number 11 team and that driver is determined. You give him an opportunity late in the race, he knows how to get a restart. He knows how to hold these guys back. Heartbreak for the 24 William Byron, but Jeff, we got to give it up. Denny Hamlin going back to back.
It was pretty damn amazing. I mean, he only led 10 laps, but as we know, it's, that one last lap that counts. And then Denny's on fire right now. I kind of knew he'd be doing well, but, Sky called it last week. She actually picked William Byron to win the race. And even though he didn't win, I mean, it's amazing that he could lead 243 laps, pretty much 3/4 of the entire race, all but, 57 laps or something like that. So 4 lead changes. 4 leaders. I thought it was a pretty interesting race. Parts of it were really fun. Some of it got a little bit monotonous, but overall, I thought it was cool. And man, I really love those throwbacks that they did.
I agree. I love Throwback Weekend, and I definitely want to get more into that. There was a lot of discourse with drivers and just over social media with that. And that's a really interesting take. And Jeff, as much as I'd like to take credit for claiming William Byron, I unfortunately chose Joey Logano. So I don't know if maybe Kevin chose William Byron, but I wish I could take credit for that one. But it was an interesting race, and it is heartbreaking for William Byron. He dominated, and I'm of the opinion that I kind of like races that drivers dominate. I mean, it kind of sucks, but it only sucks because it's not your driver, is kind of my opinion on it. So, when your driver is the one dominating, it's the best thing in the world. So I kind of like those races. It's unfortunate for William Byron. And, it's also unfortunate for Ryan Blaney. I mean, he really put a great drive on, the closing laps there, and he almost had that race won until the incident there with the 23 and the 5. I mean, I feel bad for him as well, but it's awesome for Denny. I mean, he's at the top of his game. I mean, he's at that age where he's peaking, so I'm excited to see him.
He's definitely getting after it for sure. And earlier when it counts, right? He could start racking up these wins, carry that momentum. Look, we're going to a place where he won a year ago. So if you're Denny Hamlin, you're feeling pretty good with a shot at 3 in a row. But yeah, Ryan Blaney, I mean, just incredible. The way he was able to save enough tire to cut into that lead, get around, navigate the lap traffic. Once he got to the bumper of the 45, I mean, he just pretty much drove straight by him. So yellow comes out, Blaney's like, well, here we go. He knows that he was ranked in the 30th or worse on pit stops all day, and it was the money stop. It came down to that final pit stop. Don't speed, hit your marks. Let's make sure we get the wheels tight. And good old fashioned shootout for Throwback Weekend. But I like it. I like seeing those old paint schemes. Obviously, as a longtime Jeff Gordon fan, I love the 24 throwback. I was rooting for him. I was kind of hoping we'd see him lead every single lap of the race, which hasn't been done since my home track of New Hampshire when Jeff Burton did it in 2000. But just came up a little bit short there, Jeff. And but look, 24, a lot of momentum to build on. Great position in points. Those guys have nothing to hang their head about.
Yeah, I think the throwbacks between, Hendrick Motorsports and Penske, I thought they had some of the best throwbacks. Other than my favorite one, definitely was Josh Berry. But, back to Ryan Blaney, this is his 350th career start. That's pretty cool for him. So super cool for him and on that. And then also, being able to get that P5. And I thought maybe you'd call the 24 out last week's guy. So if you called out Joey Logano, I'm sure you probably read he was sick that entire race. And as soon as he got out of his car at the end of the race, they had to take him to the infield care. But, he had a really good throwback there for Cale Yarborough's 1976 car. I thought the old Pennzoil 22 looked pretty badass.
I definitely like it. I agree. I think Penske did really well with all of their throwbacks this year. I thought Ryan Blaney's was really awesome as well. And I mean, of course, you can't get mad at Cindrix, but it was interesting. I've seen a lot of drivers, there was a big difference in the drivers, kind of like the younger drivers, Chase, Bubba, and Byron. They were actively against the Throwback Weekend, and Chase said that we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point, which I think is very shocking and surprising coming from someone who is, sports most popular driver. People who maybe are casual viewers are going to hear him saying that and kind of follow that opinion, which I thought it's kind of sad because I love Throwback Weekend. I think it's such a great way to just bring back history to the sport and, keep it going. Joey Logano and Kyle Busch were, for it. They said, it's for the fans, it's for the old drivers, it's, for these old memories that we're bringing back to life. It doesn't matter if it's cool or anything like that. You know, it's very special. Before, not to go too long here, but interesting. William Byron's comment was that it's very repetitive. And don't get me wrong, I love a good throwback to Jeff Gordon, but I feel like just because you are 24 doesn't mean you have to throw back to him every single time. So for him saying it was a little repetitive, I'm almost like, well, that's you're kind of bringing that upon yourself in a way.
Yeah, interesting remarks by those guys for sure. I mean, I could understand that a little bit more if we were a one and done at Darlington. You know, let's not forget that we're going to be kicking off the round of 16 there in the playoffs for the Southern 500, which is, something we've been doing for a long time down there. A lot of great memories made at that racetrack. But look, I'm all for it. I like the throwback. It's an old racetrack. It's got that old red and white feel to it. Every time we go down there, it just reminds you of the old days and some amazing finishes and the paint schemes. I mean, I get how it can get a little bit repetitive, doing it every single year, but it seems like they've been kind of switching it up as far as the different paint schemes that they're being brought to the racetrack. We talked about last week, not every car participated in that. It was, about half the field, maybe a little over half the field, had some unique paint schemes. But even, beyond that, they bring up, we still had Greg Biffle up in the booth with his sleeves cut off. We had the King Richard Petty up there. They do some fun things. Larry Mack was wearing the old Texaco Havoline shirt from 1993. So I kind of like it. It pays, tip of the hat to the old days, Jeff.
It's paying homage to everyone in the past. Like Austin Cendric running Dale Earnhardt's paint scheme from '79 and 1980. I thought it was really badass, and I felt bad that Kyle Larson actually wrecked. I know he got a lot of shit, and a lot of people are going to see Kyle Larson as great as everyone thinks and all that, but he just had a bad race, and that happens. But I liked his Terry Labonte throwback with the old Tony Tiger there. But you're right, about half the cars didn't do it. I mean, if you look at some of the cars that didn't, we're looking like Ross Chastain and, like we mentioned, Brad Keselowski last week. We knew he wasn't going to do it. Kyle Busch didn't do it. The 16 of AJ. I mean, there were a lot of cars that didn't. The Monster Energy cars didn't. Bubba, he didn't do anything. So half the cars didn't, half the cars did. But I think it's fun. It's like, hey, we do it once a year. It's not that big of a deal, for the guys that want to complain about it. So, if they don't like it, I guess they don't have to do anything about it. So, oh well, tough shit for them.
One thing I was hoping for, Sky, with that throwback that the 11 was rocking to, nod Carl Edwards. He said at the beginning of the race, he's like, I'm probably going to be out of here by the end, but if Denny wins, I hope he at least does the backflip off the thing. I wanted to see the backflip. I wanted to see that throwback to Carl Edwards doing the old backflip off there. Carl was nowhere to be found. Denny said, there ain't no way I'm jumping off this car.
Yeah, I would have loved. Aren't we owed a Carl Edwards jump? Like, wasn't his last race? Didn't he not jump because it rained or something? And then he just quit and like never jumped again. So unfortunate. I would have loved to see it from him. I don't know if I could see Denny doing it. I don't know if he's that. I don't know if his body would be able to move that way. And I haven't seen him move like that.
Don't know if he's got the acrobatic skills to bust that off. But old Carl Edwards, man, that was one of the coolest things when he won races. I loved watching it every single time that he did it. But this is a tough track. I mean, when we're running Darlington, and let's get into the race a little bit itself. You're racing the track just as much as you are the other drivers. I mean, that's why they call it the track that's too tough to tame. The old paperclip or the Lady in Black. It's also got more nicknames than any other track, which I kind of enjoy. But overall, like you said, the 24, I think he deserved to win that race. And then unfortunately, when Keselowski had that ring around his lug come off, which we were talking about, those single lugs again, doing it again right now, came off and had that debris caution, or as we like to call it, the miscellaneous debris, came off there, and that caused that caution. And that really shook up the entire field. So then it came down to a lot of different pit strategies. What did you think about that, Kev?
Well, I mean, I think I was live texting with you when that was happening. NASCAR doesn't throw the yellow. The 6 limps it all the way around the racetrack, makes it to pit road, and then radios in, hey, we got debris coming off turn 3 there, which was the right call. I mean, I'm not saying they should not have thrown the yellow. I just question as to why it wasn't a little bit quicker. But good call by Rudy Fugle on that one, to keep his driver out, maintain the lead. Drivers had to take the wave around that had already pitted. But that was when we kind of, saw the field flip a little bit. We had seen the 22 and the 11 and some of those guys lose track position earlier in the race. That helped them get back up front, change the course of the race. And then obviously Blaney was on that long strategy to try to run down the 45. He does, catches another yellow. Just all in all, crazy race, pretty unpredictable. Had that thing stayed green, the 24 probably would have won it if we didn't get either of those cautions. It would have all come down to those pit stops. But to lead 243 laps, have the Xfinity fast lap of the race, come home P2, it's going to sting a little bit.
It was a very interesting race. I mean, it felt like it just started, and then you seen Kyle Larson spinning out or spinning down. It was just like, what is going on? But there was a lot of controversy with this race. Everyone was all up in arms about him in the first few laps there. But then towards the end of the race, with the same exact spot where he does it again, there was a lot of discourse on whether or not, the 23 was at fault, what was going on with it. I know I did catch that on the radio of the 23, they did say that uh, the data showed that Larson didn't break there the lap before, so they were kind of trying to defend Bubba and being like, he wasn't aware of what's going on. He wasn't sure, that he was going to break there. So it's always discourse. I feel bad that Bubba always ends up on the end of these things somehow, the wrong end.
Wrong place, wrong time, right, Jeff? I mean, it's just one of those deals. They're always going to point the finger at somebody. And, you'd mentioned the SMT data. I mean, some of it was going down early in the race. There was no computer transmissions. I mean, obviously everything got back up, but you and I were almost saying, hey, man, that would have been kind of interesting to see these guys run the race without, the computer data, the fuel consumption, the tire wear rate, all those things were temporarily on hold.
So in a way, it kind of was a throwback weekend if you really think about it, because we didn't have all the SFT data back in the day. So it was interesting, and how it did flip the field. I don't know if the 23, if he got into him or not. It's really tough to say. But I did find it amusing how Ryan Blaney was talking to Michael Jordan after the race, and he said, if your guy wouldn't have hit the 5 car, I would have done, I would have won the race. And they just joked it off, gave him the thumbs up, and Jordan had a good time with the whole race. And even at the beginning of the race, when Jordan was being interviewed with Jamie Little, she was sitting there talking about Denny Hamlin, the 11 against the world. And as much as Jordan loves him, he's like, Denny's a clown. He does that just to rile people up. He just wants to get noticed either way, which Kyle Busch used to do. He's like, you know what? Whether you're cheering me on or you're booing me, I'm get 100% of your attention. So that's the same thing Denny's doing. But Michael Jordan said he used to do the same thing when he got the booze. It made him, more enthusiastic, and he'd give it a little more gas himself.
Yeah, I would say it's about 50-50 up in those grandstands now, maybe 60-40 on the booze side. Closer to home you get Chesterfield, Virginia area. So, the Richmonds, the Martinsvilles of the world. Denny seems to get a little bit more applause, but it's a love-hate deal. He's right there, like you said, where Kyle Busch, was, where Kevin Harvick was at one time. And I don't think it bothers Denny one bit. If anything, it just probably fires him up to go out there, race harder, talk about it on his podcast on Monday. I mean, if you're Denny right now, you're feeling good. You're going for a three-peat at a racetrack that you won at a year ago. It's going to be interesting to see how the tire wear plays into Bristol. But before we completely turn the page on Darlington, I think it was overall great success. The race ran a little bit long on some of the coverage, so we missed some of the post-race interviews there. But all in all, we've been griping on Fox a little bit. I think they might have had a couple hiccups throughout the race, but I'll give them a passing grade this week.
Yeah, they did pretty good. And one thing I did want to bring up, I know Kyle Larson, he had a bad race and got kind of shit on a little bit, but still to this day, Kyle Larson, as far as active drivers, has led more laps at Darlington than any active driver out there right now. He's led 1,048 laps at Darlington. He just happened to have a bad weekend, unfortunately. So, I'm sure he'll do a lot better next week, because, when we were talking about, before we kind of turn the page a little bit, if we look at the fall race, he crushed it. He just totally dominated it. He led 462 laps out of 500. So, that's something to think about. In second place to Chase Elliott and Bubba Wallace. I think he's been on a heater a little bit lately too. He's been placing in the top 5 quite a bit, and he had a P3 in the fall race. So, I think we're going to see some interesting racing next week at the Coliseum.
It's hard to say what Bristol we're going to get. Are we going to get, look at Darlington. I mean, Sky, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, right? I mean, we only had 4 different leaders. We had talked about opening up the season. We had all these different lead changes, of course, factoring in 2 super speedways, a dominating performance by William Byron. We weren't really seeing the passing at the front, but that's kind of always been Darlington. That's just what it's known for, is it's, side by side racing, coming down to get the wire, long green flag runs, along, guys out front leading laps, but only 4 lead changes. That's not a ton. And, Bristol, we were going to a place where Kyle Larson completely smoked, the entire field, dominated it, but the spring race was a different story, right? We had the different tire package. So a lot of different variables, I think, there.
A lot of different variables for sure. I do think, the whole super speedway thing definitely skews the numbers and amount of lead changes for sure. Like I said earlier, I love a good domination race. It only sucks when it's not your driver. So I'm glad for William Byron. I mean, it's even though you don't get the result you want, that's still a really great race. It's good momentum to build off of. I mean, we haven't seen a race like that so this year, so it's nice to see that he's doing so well. And I'm excited for Bristol. We'll have to see how it goes, but pit road is something that I want to bring up. I mean, I feel like we talked about it every single week. You mentioned, the nut falling off. It's something every week. It's if it's something happening physically on pit road, tires coming off, pit road penalties. It just seems like the Cup Series cannot get a break, and it's really interesting. I don't. It's almost like what happened. I don't know if maybe we've slacked so much on the things like that and focused so much maybe just on the car side that we're losing the fundamentals of kind of what makes pit road function. And it's kind of sad. I mean, we see drivers that are good, notorious. I mean, Team Penske rarely ever has stuff like this. And I feel like the last few weeks it's been nonstop on pit road.
Yeah, there's been a lot of issues on pit road this year and last year, and you're right. I don't know what's going on. If it's just the changes with the car and everything. There's just been a lot of mistakes made, and even on the drivers. There's a lot of penalties for speeding. Or Eric Jones, unfortunately, under that wreck, had to enter pit road and got caught there during the caution when they closed pit road. So tough break for the 43 on that. But yeah, they really need to wrap it up. Kevin and I were sending a couple videos to each other earlier, but from way back in the day, and I still remember even when I was first watching NASCAR, when the jack man, they didn't even have to pick up the jack. They used to just grab it by the handle and swing that shit around to the other side. And I think it was Cale Yarborough that was doing it when he hit one of the crew guys in the ankles and took him out and broke his ankle. Kevin, you sent that one to me earlier, and I did see it earlier in the day.
Yeah, that definitely was a throwback to how pit road used to be. It really wasn't until the mid 90s with Ray Evernham and Jeff Gordon where they started choreographing these pit stops. We know how important it is. Races are won and lost on pit road, the speeding penalties, there's just so much that goes into pit roads. And that's where all the mistakes seem to be made. Whether it's the driver coming in or a driver getting blocked in. We saw that happen a couple times yesterday where they had to back up, go around, lose a couple spots. Those are crucial for sure, especially at a track that's so tough to pass. I mean, we mentioned only 4 different leaders in the Cup side, 9 different leaders on the Xfinity side, which was also a great race. Quick shout out to Brandon Jones for winning that. Chase Elliott, of course, running his one and only Xfinity race of the year, came runner up. I thought Justin Allgaier was going to have a shot to win there, but P3, those guys have nothing to hang their hat about. They're a strong team on the Xfinity side for sure. But yeah, the Cup guys, it's there's a lot of issues on pit road. Wheels falling off. You don't see that as much in the Xfinity series, and why is that? Because they're still using 5 lug nuts. I don't know if we'll ever get away from that though. I feel like NASCAR is just so hell-bent, determined on this Gen 7 car. We're keeping the body this way. We're going to keep the single wheel hub. I don't see us ever going back to 5.
I definitely agree with you. I feel like we're stuck with the one lug nut, and I will have to see if the Xfinity series, if it ever changes to that, because I feel like NASCAR's kind of going in that direction. But yeah, I'm excited for Bristol next weekend. Denny, like you said, Denny was the winner last year, and he just got 2 in a row. We had Christopher Bell do the same thing, got 3 in a row earlier in the year. I mean, Joe Gibbs is quietly sneaking up and, doing good numbers, whether maybe they're not as flashy as everybody else. Like we said, Denny kind of snuck this win in, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day in the book, it doesn't say how you won. It just says that you won. So I'm excited to see how Denny does. Last year was definitely a veterans race. I remember Brad Keselowski was someone who also did phenomenal last year. So he could be someone to look out for.
Yeah, that might be a good early pick. I think RFK in general is showing speed. I had Ryan Preece originally in my fantasy lineup, starting P2 there. Ran pretty well until he kind of got caught on the offside of that caution that fell later and just never could get his track position back. And he wasn't the only one. So the RFK Fords, I think, are definitely, a good guys to keep an eye on this weekend, and it's just really going to come down to, number one, the track conditions, the weather report. We obviously got to see what that's going to look like because we run it in the daytime. Bristol runs a lot different in the day than it does at night. The way the track takes the rubber, that's going to play into it for sure. But yeah, the Gibbs guys, I think, have the speed. We know Hendrick is probably going to be strong. I mean, we saw Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson finish in the top 5 there in the spring race. Obviously, Kyle dominated the fall race. So it's just going to depend on what Bristol we get, Jeff.
Yeah, and I want to say something again. You're talking about Ryan Preece. I know he had a P26 this weekend, so it wasn't that great. But as far as most improved drivers from last year, man, I'll tell you what, Ryan Preece he's got it down, man. Because I mean, at the end of last year, I believe he only had 1 single top 5 and 5 top 10s in the entire season of 2024. And you look at what he's done so far this year. I mean, the guy's just kicking ass, which is, to me, I mean, I knew he was a good driver, but he's stepped his game up, and he's a really good contender. So I think he's going to do some damage. One to keep an eye on for next week as well.
Yeah, and he doesn't like to lose. He talks about it a lot. No driver likes to lose, but he's got a competitive side. He came from modifieds, came out of the New England area, my neck of the woods. Got a shot at a good ride here and really wants to prove himself. Obviously Brad Keselowski believes in him, and we can't forget about Chris Buescher. Buescher showed a lot of strength and speed last year. I think we're going to see the same out of those guys this year. A lot of great racetracks coming up for the 17. I think he might be a guy to keep your eye on this weekend as well. Getting to that point in the year where it's so tough, as you're seeing Sky in fantasy, to maintain these picks and figure out who I want to save. I only have X amount of uses. I can't use William Byron this weekend if I want any uses for him later this summer. So on the fantasy side of it, it's tough, right? Because you got to kind of play that middle of the field, up picking guys that are going to run the top 10, and then maybe go down to your bonus picks and try and make it up there. But I don't know. It's tough fantasy picks for Bristol, I feel.
It definitely is. I kind of dread even starting to think about that. Thought it was funny. They one of the questions that I asked last week was who's going to finish better between Ty Gibbs and Kyle Busch, and I was stumped, guys. I don't know about you, but I had no idea who to click because they both been. But I was surprised. I mean, I think they both got in the top 10.
No, you're right. Kyle Busch finished 10th. Ty Gibbs finished ninth. So that was a tough pick there because I think I took the 8.
So did I. But they both have been very lackluster here and there this year. So it was almost like, who do you even click? Because they were both not doing too good. But I'm glad to see that especially Ty Gibbs. I mean, he's been having a rough time, so it's nice to see him get, a P9 there. But yeah, got to start picking wisely. It's coming up, the season, it goes by so quick. I mean, we're already, how far into it, it feels like.
Yeah, we're about halfway there almost, and it's tough when in the fantasy because I've got drivers with I've only got like 6 uses left, and we've got plenty of races to go before the playoffs even start. So yeah, I am getting low on like my William Byron and my Christopher Bell, so I'm gonna have to kind of hold back a little bit on them and pick up some of these other guys. But I've got a few uses left above him. I know he didn't finish where he wanted to this weekend, but like I said, he's been doing damn good so far the rest of this year, winning some races. And, he did win, like I said, the fall race. He had a P3 in Bristol. And I think Bristol is a super fun track. I'm glad they don't do it on dirt. We tried that out a little bit to see how it went, and then we just kind of went back. But I think we're going to see a lot of trade and paint again for this race. Another, half a mile track, 0.533. We got bankings in 28 to 28 degrees in the turns, and your straightaways are 4 to 8. So I think it's going to be a really good race next week.
Yeah, I would agree. I wish we could see it back on the lights. I love Bristol under the lights Saturday night. That's just the kind of race that track feels like to me. I don't love seeing it in the daytime, but who knows? Maybe Mother Nature will make it a night race. We'll just have to see. That's the racetrack where they call it the vortex. Cars are going around so fast around the world's fastest half mile that it creates a vortex to keep the rain away. That's what DW used to say. So it's going to depend on that. Looking at the schedule though here, guys, I mean, we got an interesting lineup coming up, right? So we get through Bristol, and then we're going to have off weekend for Easter weekend and Passover. Then we go to Talladega. So we're right back to a super speedway again. We already know the chaos there. Jeff, you and I will be representing Mash the Gas in Texas after that. So then we have back-to-back mile and a halves, then the All-Star break, and then the Coke 600. So when you look into May, I mean, it's basically a mile and a half show outside of North Wilkesboro, which is a non-points race. So, switching up short track, super speedway, nothing but mile and a halves in May. And then we start talking about Nashville and Michigan, which, Sky, you're still banking on probably keeping your orange hair until at least June 1st in Nashville.
Yeah, I've just come to the conclusion that hopefully somebody put it in my head that he's going to go win this year. So I hope that that is not the case because I don't know if I can keep orange hair for an entire year. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Talladega scares me. I'm not too thrilled about Talladega. I'm fortunate that, Ryan Blaney, he's usually really good at Talladega, so it's not too bad, but oh my gosh, these super speedways make me ill.
Yeah, it really does. It's tough because, and again, with fantasy, it's like, you don't want to put in your favorite driver, or you're not your favorite, but your drivers who you think might win, because a lot of these drivers that are really good, it just takes one car to get one little mistake and take out, 10, 15, 20 cars. So many times we've seen these races on the super speedways and only half the field even finishes the race. But you're always going to have someone like, Denny Hamlin does a really good job, I think, on the super speedways. But again, I don't think it's someone that I would pick just because I don't want to waste a use on them. So I kind of use a lot of my mediocre guys on those super speedways. But like Kevin was mentioned, we're coming up to a lot of mile and a halves. And, right now in the point standings, from what I'm looking at, I think a lot of the guys that are in like the top 10 as far as points and in the playoff points, I think we're going to see these guys doing some winning. I think Christopher Bell's going to be kicking ass. William Byron, Kyle Larson's going to be kicking ass. And I think Chase Elliott might start stepping it up a little bit. I mean, he is sixth in the point standings, even though he has not won a race yet this year. But I think he's getting his game back a little bit. It's just taking some time. And I don't know what it is about him in the past. He's just kind of dragging his feet, it seems like. And he's got good equipment. He's got a great organization. I mean, it's definitely hard to beat Hendrick Motorsports when you talk about top tier organizations up there with like Joe Gibbs and Roger Penske. So it's going to be fun to see these mile and a halves coming up and right after Bristol.
Well, I think that's the importance of keeping an eye on the schedule, not only for fantasy, but a lot of these drivers just looking ahead. Where's my best opportunities? Where are we going to put our resources? Chase Elliott kind of reminds me of what Ryan Blaney did a couple years ago, and that was just quietly be successful, clicking off top fives, top tens, maybe win a stage here or there, and putting yourself in position to win, to carry enough numerical points, because we'd kind of kicked around the idea last week if there was going to be 16 or more winners. We've now seen Seabell win 3. We've seen Denny Hamlin win 2, possibly 3 in a row. So all these variables are definitely going to play into this thing. And, we talk about the bonus points, the Xfinity fastest lap, and getting Kyle Larson back out on the racetrack so he could maybe get a few more points, little, unbeknownst to then bring out the final caution of the race. So, every point matters when you're looking at this thing from a numerical position. I highly doubt that we're going to be talking about that come the end of the summer. Is Chase going to get in on points? But you just never know. I mean, these guys go on losing streaks. You get wrecked at Talladega. You have a bad week here and there, and then you're in a must-win position. So a lot of things could, still remain unseen. I think we have a lot of storylines that are yet to be written, and it all starts here in Bristol. Difficult racetrack, 500 laps around this place, extremely physically demanding, Jeff. And you got to be tough. You got to be able to keep your tires on it, keep your brakes cool, keep your tempers cool to be successful in Bristol.
And right now on the point standings, Kyle Busch is on the cutoff line right now. And I know it's kind of early to be talking about the cutoff line and everything, but there's drivers like AJ and Michael McDowell, which are right below it, just a little bit on the points. So, it just takes them a couple of good races. And, if Chase Briscoe or Kyle Busch slips a little bit, they're going to be up into the playoff spots right now. But I don't know if we're going to see 16 different winners or not. I'm seeing too many guys going heaters, like you're saying, between Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin. I think Denny Hamlin's going to win 1 or 2 more races this year. And I definitely think William Byron and Kyle Larson are as well. So, Ryan Blaney, we know he's going to get a win sometime this year. And then, hopefully for Sky, old Joey in the 22 get a win so she can put her regular hair back. And hey, Sky's kind of wondering, I noticed you might have gotten a little bit of questions about that 22 on your leg while you were at work the other day.
Yeah, people were like, "What is that?" There was one person who knew. He was like, "I can't believe you would even get Joey Logano tatted on you." I'm like, "It's just a number, though. It's just a number. It's not too bad."
No, I thought it was awesome. I happened to just see that across your page, and I got a chuckle out of it. I was like, I wonder how many people actually know what it is. But while we're talking about numbers right now, I wanted to go back. Let's talk about the number 8 again, and Lamar Jackson. I saw that he had a hauler out there, selling merch.
I am
Darlington.
so mad about that. What was he thinking? That's
Ridiculous.
Yeah. And you know what? Dale was just like, I don't have time for this, And I
Yeah.
liked Lamar, but now I'm like, you're a fool, but you're just a fool. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
wonder
that
how much,
bullshit.
how much of it was his PR guys and a lot of the marketing guys around him that kind of, hey, we need to go after junior motorsports. I mean, I don't know if Lamar is a NASCAR guy or not, but they influenced him enough to be like, well, we got to get this 8, we got to get the licensing rights to it. Dale came out and said, we've trademarked the new stylization of this 8. We're going to go away from the old one. Really no fight out of JRM. I was kind of expecting more, but I don't think, like you said, it just isn't worth Junior's time. He's got too much other shit to do.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of number 8s, there is another number 8 that made history over the weekend. I want to give a shout out to Alex Ovechkin in hockey, pro hockey, scoring 895 goals. He now has passed Wayne Gretzky for all-time amount of goals. It was a pretty cool game to see him in the Washington Capitals, even though they did lose the game. It was a really cool ceremony that they had in the middle of the game to give a shout out to another number 8. So yeah, Lamar, you don't own shit. There's a lot of number 8s out there that are killer players, better than you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. We give nods to different sports and things doing, milestone things. I mean, to put that in perspective for NASCAR fans, that would be like somebody, winning as many races as Jeff Gordon, if not more, because we know we're just not going to see the David Pearson and Richard Petty number ever again. So to win 93 Cup races would kind of be the equivalent of those goals, to pass one of the greats. It's amazing. That's what makes sports great. That's what makes our sport great. We almost saw William Byron lead every single lap, which hadn't been done since 2000. So there's always a stat to be broken and a record. And of course, these guys don't care about that. Denny doesn't care about that. He just wants trophies and a championship. This might be the year, Sky. I don't know. The 11 might do it. I picked him last year. Maybe I was a year off.
I would like to see it, but I don't know if I have faith in Hamlin anymore. I hate to say it, but he could always prove me wrong. I'm excited for Bristol. I think I'm gonna go with Bubba Wallace this weekend. He's been, like you said, Jeff, a fire under him. The heater's been on. I feel like he's been hovering around the top five. He's gonna get it done this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go with the 11 for the overall win, like Kevin was talking about, but he did get his 56th career win, which, he's getting up there as far as, number of wins, and he's getting towards the end of his career a little bit. But I would still kind of like to see Denny Hamlin get a championship. He's put in his time, he's paid his dues. He speaks what's on his mind. And he's a great race car driver. We know that, but I don't know how much longer he's going to last. We've kind of talked about, is he going to retire in the next year or two? If he does, is he just going to run a couple partial races here and there with 2311 and just kind of hang around and be, co-owner with Jordan, have a good time? But I don't know who I'm going to take for next week. I'm kind of looking at. I'm not going to say Martin Truex Jr. because he came in P2 last year, but since he's not in the 19 anymore,
you can go with Briscoe.
No, Martin Truex, man.
I know, but now Briscoe's there, so
that's what I'm saying. I can't go. I can't go with Martin Truex because he's not in the 19 anymore. Even though I still look at the number 19, and it always comes to mind. I'm just thinking Truex Jr. I just can't get it out of my mind. I'm so used to seeing that Bass Pro scheme on there, and Truex is all I think of when I see it. But no, I think for this coming weekend, I think I'm going to go with the 24 William Byron.
It's a good pick. Yeah, it's a good pick. I'm torn because I feel like Denny could do 3 in a row. I mean, when you give him momentum and you go to a track that he's confident in, it's tough to beat. But I just feel like it's Kyle Larson's. It's time. It's time for him to get that W. We saw what he did there in the fall race. He's the defending winner. He knows how to, rip the boards, as we talk about. I'm picking the 5. He had a terrible week in Darlington. He's going to bounce back hard from that. He knows he made some mistakes. I expect the best out of the 5 this weekend.
Yeah, definitely a good weekend. It's going to be fun for next week. The one thing I also wanted to mention before we totally turn the page 100% and shut her down was the Wood brothers with their 75th anniversary celebration they had. So I did feel kind of bad when the 21 wrecked and had a killer paint scheme, but it was cool to see Leonard Wood out there and the Clint Boyer and Harvick doing some laps in some of the old 21 cars. I thought it was pretty badass.
Yeah, and it was great to see the Wood family, generations of the Wood family out there give the command to start engines. So that's what's fun about the Throwback Weekend. You do some fun stuff like that, bring the families together, like we said, tip their hat to the old timers. But that's in the rearview now. We're on to Bristol, guys, and we got all 3 series there. The Craftsman Truck Series are there Friday night. That's going to be a fantastic watch on FS1. CW, of course, carrying Bristol 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Another great race there. And then, of course, Cup race 3 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Looking forward to it, guys. I think we got our picks in to the best of our ability. Try and make some smart moves in fantasy. I got to catch you, Jeff. You got some points on me over there. Sky, I know you're still digging out a little bit. So we're on to Bristol. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms across the board at Mash the Gas. Follow NASCAR Sky at NASCAR Sky. And until then, guys,
Mash the gas.
I feel the engine screaming back. I feel the sweat